There was a time when everything got under his skin. A raised eyebrow from a stranger, a missed call from someone he loved, a careless comment in a crowded room. Each one felt like a personal attack. He carried every word, every look, every silence like weight on his shoulders. It wasn't that he was weak. No, he just hadn't yet learned the art of control. He hadn't discovered that power doesn't come from reacting. It comes from remaining unmoved. He hadn't learned to act as if nothing bothered him, even when everything did. It changed the day he saw a man in a cafe get humiliated and remain calm, a spilled coffee, a shouting manager, a crowd watching, and yet the man simply cleaned himself up, smiled faintly, and walked out as if none of it mattered. It wasn't indifference, it was inner strength. He didn't look like a coward. He looked like someone who had already won 1,000 silent battles. That was the moment something clicked. What if strength isn't about controlling others, but about mastering yourself? So he began the process, quietly, without announcement, not to impress anyone, not for likes or praise, but because he was tired of being shaken by everything around him. It wasn't easy. The world has a way of poking your wounds just to see if you'll flinch. People test you. Life throws little jabs, subtle betrayals, invisible disappointments. But instead of reacting, he started pausing, breathing, observing. He didn't fake calm, he built it. He trained himself to respond to discomfort with stillness. The more he practiced, the more he realized something wild. Most things weren't worth the energy he gave them. He stopped overthinking the things people said behind his back. He stopped chasing explanations. He no longer needed to correct every misunderstanding or defend every decision. He started walking through the world like a man whose peace could not be stolen. And people noticed, not because he told them, but because they could feel it. His presence changed. He stopped needing to prove anything. When chaos erupted around him, he became a pillar. When someone tried to drag him into drama, he simply didn't participate. And that quiet confidence, that was louder than any shout. He didn't become numb. He became selective. Not everything deserved his fire. Not every insult deserved a reaction. Not every invitation to a fight deserved his attendance. He started asking himself, does this matter in a week, a year? Will this moment take anything from my purpose? If the answer was no, he let it go. He realized that real power comes when you can be surrounded by noise and still stay focused. When you can be hurt and still keep your mouth shut. When you can feel the urge to react, but choose not to. That strength, acting as if nothing bothers you, isn't coldness. It's wisdom. It's the discipline to protect your energy. It's the recognition that your response is your responsibility. No one can drag you into the mud unless you let them. And every time you rise above, you rise further into the person you were meant to become. It's not about pretending. It's about detachment. It's about learning to stand still when life tries to push you over. The real test came not when things were quiet, but when everything started going wrong. Deadlines missed, people lied, a friend betrayed him when he needed support most. It would have been easy to fall apart, to explode, to cry out that life was unfair, but instead he remembered, not every fire is meant to be fought. Some are meant to be walked through silently, with purpose. He didn't post cryptic quotes. He didn't vent to everyone who'd listen. He just kept going, eyes forward, shoulders back, silence sharp enough to slice through doubt. The truth is, most people are addicted to reaction. Someone says something, immediate outrage. Something goes wrong, panic. An insult hits, anger. But he was done living that way. He wanted power that didn't depend on being liked. So he stopped flinching. When someone tried to trigger him, he'd smile and let them burn their own energy. When people doubted him, he let them. He didn't argue anymore. He outgrew the need to be understood. He wasn't cold. He just became rooted in something deeper than approval. And the irony? The less he reacted, the more respect he gained. People began to wonder what had changed, why nothing seemed to rattle him, why he didn't gossip, why he didn't explode, why he looked calm even in chaos. But they didn't see the hours spent alone, training that inner stillness. They didn't know how many times he chose silence over self-destruction. They didn't realize it wasn't natural, it was earned. Because pretending nothing bothers you is easy for a moment. But truly mastering that mindset takes work. It takes rewiring how you respond to stress, rejection, pain, and pressure. It's not pretending you're okay. It's knowing you'll be okay regardless. There were days it was lonely, days he felt like screaming, but he'd take a walk instead. Days he wanted revenge, but he'd write in a journal instead. He made a rule, never speak from a wound. Never post from a low place, never react from ego, because power isn't loud, it's controlled. And every time he kept his cool when everything inside him was boiling, he won a quiet victory over himself. No trophies, no applause, just another layer of strength added to his soul. Eventually, peace became his default, not because the world stopped being cruel, but because he stopped letting cruelty control him. He learned that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you've decided your energy is too precious to waste on what doesn't serve your growth. And that's a level most people never reach because they're too busy proving, performing, pleasing. He stopped living for performance. He started living for purpose. And that shift, that's where the transformation truly began. His world started changing, not because the problems stopped, but because he stopped shrinking for them. He walked through storms with the same calm face he wore on sunny days. Not because he didn't feel fear, but because he stopped giving fear the steering wheel. There was a moment, sitting in traffic, running late, after getting a call that his job might be gone, that he felt the urge to scream. But instead he laughed, not because it was funny, but because he realized losing your calm never solved anything. In fact, it always made things worse. So he took a breath and took control. From that day, he built a new habit. Every time he wanted to react, he paused, just 3 seconds. Enough time to check in with himself. Is this worth my peace? He'd ask. Most of the time it wasn't. Someone cuts you off in traffic. What's gained by shouting? Someone mocks your dream. What's improved by arguing? That 3-second pause became sacred. It was the space between who he was and who he was becoming. It was where he chose peace over pride. Direction over distraction, stillness over reaction. He wasn't perfect. There were days he slipped, days he snapped. But even then, he recovered faster. He apologized without ego, learned without shame. Every mistake became training. Every misstep became insight. And over time, the difference showed, not in his words, but in his presence. People began leaning in, asking him how he stayed so calm, wondering why he never seemed to lose control. But he didn't boast about it. He simply smiled, knowing that the answer wasn't a tactic. It was a mindset, a decision he made every single day to not be owned by outside noise. He started attracting peace. Opportunities came that used to run from him. Relationships deepened because people trust what feels safe. And he was safe, not because he avoided conflict, but because he didn't escalate it. He'd sit in meetings, listening more than speaking. And when he finally did speak, people listened, not because he shouted, but because his words carried the weight of stillness. And that kind of presence, it can't be faked. It's grown in quiet choices, small self-promises, and the refusal to be reactive. At home, he was different too. When things went wrong, he didn't blame. He found solutions. He didn't bring stress into every room he entered. He brought stability, not perfection, but balance, not dominance, but quiet leadership. He realized something few ever understand. When you act as if nothing bothers you, you don't lose touch with reality. You stay rooted in it. You stop giving power to things unworthy of your spirit, and you finally give yourself room to become the version of you that was buried under noise. One evening, while walking home under a darkening sky, he passed the same cafe where he once watched that stranger stay calm while being publicly embarrassed. The memory hit him like a soft echo from a past life. Back then, he couldn't understand how a person could carry such unshakable peace. But now he walked with that same quiet force. Life had thrown him everything: loss, rejection, betrayal, pressure, and he had learned to carry all of it with grace. Not because he felt nothing, but because he had finally mastered the art of feeling without falling apart. It wasn't about becoming a stone. It was about becoming water, fluid, calm, and impossible to break. When someone tried to disturb him now, they'd find no reaction, not because he didn't care, but because he refused to give his power to provocation. He stopped offering explanations to those committed to misunderstanding him. He no longer lost sleep over opinions that wouldn't matter in a year. He realized that most people project their own chaos onto others, and if you're not careful, you'll start carrying storms that don't belong to you. Acting as if nothing bothered him didn't mean suppressing emotion. It meant choosing the right outlet. He learned to run when overwhelmed, to journal instead of explode, to talk to his reflection before talking to the world. He built himself a quiet system of regulation, because the truth is, self-mastery isn't loud. It's made up of unseen decisions, tiny acts of resistance, moments where you choose silence, not out of fear, but out of control. The people who once dismissed him started coming back around, not to apologize, but to ask how he managed to change so much. He didn't preach to them. He didn't list rules. He just lived differently. The more he detached from noise, the more magnetic he became. He didn't dominate conversations, but when he spoke, it meant something. He didn't interrupt to prove a point. He waited until his presence spoke louder than his voice. He had learned a truth that very few ever do. What bothers you controls you. And when you finally stop being controlled by every insult, every delay, every minor frustration, you become free. Truly free. You stop being a puppet of emotion. You stop handing your peace to people who don't even value it. You become unshakable, not because the world is soft, but because you're strong. Now, when storms come, and they still do, he faces them without panic. He doesn't announce his pain. He doesn't ask for sympathy. He simply keeps moving with a calm heart, with a focused mind, with an unbothered spirit. And that, more than talent, more than speed, more than charm, that is what changed his life. So if you're listening to this now, wondering how to rise above the noise, start here. Act as if nothing bothers you, not to lie to yourself, but to train your response. Protect your energy. Choose peace, even when chaos demands your attention. Master the pause. Learn the value of a slow breath. And let your silence become the loudest proof of your power. Because in a world that feeds on reaction, the calm ones always win in the end. And when they do, it's not with a shout, it's with a quiet smile, a peaceful walk, and a life that no longer bends for storms.